and let's start today's session. Okay, so I hope you have got some idea what do you mean by an exact number, match underscore parent, and wrap underscore content. Okay, so match underscore parent, an exact number, or a wrap content. These are the possible values of width or height. Okay, of a view. So let's start. We just expand it. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. I was talking about the layout parameters. Okay, the layout parameters, which are the parameters of a layout. Okay, those parameters specify the width and a height. Okay, using match underscore parent, wrap underscore content, or an exact number. Okay, you can use these numbers for a measurement of a view also, and for a measurement of for widgets, and for a measurement of a layout also. Okay, uh, this is what we have already seen. We have already seen the event handling. Okay, and yeah, resizing also we saw in the last lecture, and we also saw that okay, the entire view tree is single threaded. Okay, so when you are going to do from impact some activity from one activity to another activity, you are supposed to use a handler. Okay, we'll see a couple of examples in when we are going to do practical. Okay, so this is also we saw that Android framework is also able to focus handling. Okay, there are certain elements which are focusable, certain elements which are not focusable. Okay, I told you about two modes, touch mode and click mode. Okay, a focus handling algorithm. Normally what happens, it's a nearest neighbor in one direction. It works in a nearest neighbor in one direction, but otherwise if you do not want to follow this, then you have to override. Okay, you have to provide the an override. Okay, and this is for the touch mode. The button is not workable in a touch mode. The other elements are workable in a touch mode. So button, when you touch a button, it's not good. It's not like they are not workable in a touch mode. It's like when you click a button or when you touch a button is not going to get a focus. Okay, so the only thing that it will do once touching, okay, it will just call its listener. Okay, and another thing, we also saw scrolling. Okay, Android framework can handle scrolling as well. There are three functions associated with scrolling: awaken, scroll bar, scroll to, scroll by. Okay, and I hope this is the screen that we were at when we finished the last lecture. So this is about tags. Okay, so unlike IDs, tags are not used to identify views. So tags just provide extra piece of information. Okay, like here, this is a tag over here. Okay, this is a tag, and this provides extra information about the view. Okay, that can be associated with the view. Like if this says that this particular view. Okay, this particular view. So see, here two views are associated. On one view, you have not mentioned any tag, but if you want to specify some extra piece of information for other view, you can use a tag attribute. No, sorry, tag. Okay, attribute is Android colon ID and Android colon values. You can specify the tag. Okay, so they are just used to provide some extra piece of information. They are most often used as a convenience to store data related to views in the views themselves. Okay, so sorry for the interruption. Let me start one more time. Today's internet is very unreliable. Okay, let's start from where we left. Okay, so this is the thing that I was talking about. Okay, I hope this screen is clear to everyone. I was talking about tags. Okay, so tag is a mechanism to provide an extra piece of information within a view. Okay, so they do not identify the view, but they provide some extra piece of information. Okay, and let's expand it. Okay, so the next thing is themes other than tags. Okay, the next thing is theme. Okay, so when we discussed a context and a context wrapper, so we also saw something related to theme. Okay, context theme wrapper, if you remember. So by default, views are created using theme of a context object supplied to their constructor. However, you can also use your own theme. Like in this case, you can specify in a linear layout, okay, that you are going to use a theme, and you can mention a theme. Okay, otherwise a theme of its parent is going to be applied. Okay. And other thing are properties. So let's say a view is associated with a certain set of properties. Okay, you can set an alpha of a view. You can set, you can translate a view from one point to another point. And when you are going to translate from a view from one point to another point, okay, the properties that you're going to impact are translation underscore x and translation underscore y. Alpha is somewhat related to the coloring, or opacity, transparency. Okay, and this translation x and translation underscore y are related to the movements of a view from one point to another point. Okay, if you want to see some, if you want to show some animation from, let's say, the an object, a view which is regarded as a view, okay, is moving from one point to another point on a click of a button or something, let's say at the background, okay, then this whole thing can be fed to an animator. Okay, you can use an animator based animations using these properties. Okay, so view class exposes these properties: alpha property, translation underscore x property, translation underscore y property. Okay, so these properties are available both in property form as well as in similarly named setter and getter methods. You can set alpha to some float number. Okay, and you can also get the values of x. You can also get the value of y if you want to just get an information about x and y. Okay, using the getters, and you can set the information about x and y so that it can get a new position over the screen. Okay, so if we talk about animation, starting with Android version 3.0, the package of animation was android.animation. Okay, and these kind of things, alpha, translation underscore x, translation underscore y, okay, were being used after, were being used from an Android .animation. Pre 3.0 version, animations were only used to see how views are rendered on display. Okay, if we talk about security, okay, we can enable security. We can enable the touch filtering. Okay, let's say sometimes why do we need security? Because sometimes the kind of action that you are doing on an Android application, okay, that action might not be from an authorized source. Okay, suppose what happens if your let's say if some other person is trying to access your contents. Okay, so you need to have some sort of security, and that security can be enabled by calling a method called set filter touches when obscured. So what it does is, let's say it prompts the authentication screen and on the foreground. Okay, and your application will go at the background. Your activity screen, the user interface activity screen will go at the background. So once it goes to the background, due to this method, set filter touches when obscured, the background window is said to be obscured in that case. Okay, because the foreground window, which is a security window, which asks for authentication string. Okay, and if you provide that authentication, only then that foreground window will be disappeared. Okay, and then you will be able to access the UI. Okay, so now let's talk about, after this discussion of the views. Okay, let's talk about the layouts. Okay, I'm going to stop a share. I'm going to start another share for layout. So let's do the layout thing. Another share for layout. Okay, yeah, this is for the layout. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Okay, so this is as far as the layout is concerned. So okay, so this kind of a tree, we have already seen this kind of a tree. Okay, in the earlier when we were talking about a view presentation. Okay, like it says that it talks about a hierarchy of a view group and a view. Okay, so your entire user interface can be represented in the form of a tree like this. Okay, so it says that a view group, okay, is consisting of a view group and other views. Okay, and that view group which is there, which is contained in the parent view group, can also further contain other views. Okay, so if I talk about in the form of a class diagram and an object diagram, what a view and a view group is. So you say that you have an object class, okay, at the very basic level, and you have a view class which is derived from an object class, and you also have a view group class which is derived from a view class. So if you say that, okay, from an object class you can get these objects, okay, and from view class, because it's an extended version of an object class. So this is an extended version of an object class, and these objects are also called widgets. Okay, So buttons, checkboxes, radio groups, these are some examples of widgets. Okay, and view group class is further extension of a view class. Okay, so you see that objects are, you know, this bigger object. Okay, the more derived object is, the more larger an object is. Okay, and these objects of view classes are called layouts. Okay, and layout, the types of layouts are linear layout, constraint layout. Okay, and these are some of the examples of layouts, and we'll be looking at these in future. Okay, so this is, I hope this slide is, you people are comfortable with the slide. This slide shows its class diagram for the classes which are involved for when we talk about a layout. Okay, so what is a layout? How to define a layout? Layout is said to be an object of a view group class. Okay, okay, and what is a widget? Widgets are used to refer the objects of a view class. Okay. So how to declare a layout? There are basically two methods. One is a static method, other is a runtime method or a dynamic method. Okay, the static method is you declare UI elements in an XML file. Okay, so you can use a layout editor also for this purpose. A layout editor is a drag and drop kind of a tool that you can, you know, you have a toolbar, and from a toolbar you have some graphical user interface. The moment the way you lay out the these widgets on the screen, okay, automatically the XML file is being created. Okay, so what is the benefit of using the static layout? There are twofold benefits. One of the benefit is, if you do this, okay, application presentation. So see, this is an application and this is how it is presented with these three tools. Application presentation can be separated from a code. So heart symbol for the code, so they can be separated. Okay, so if you make some changes into the code, okay, the presentation you are not going to touch. If you can make your changes in the presentation, this code is not supposed to be touched. Okay, so the separation becomes possible with the help of this layout editor, with the help of not just with the help of a layout editor, but using this method, static method. Even if you are not using layout editor, even if you are using, you know, opening an XML file, okay, coding the XML file by hand, okay, even then these advantages are there. Okay, these advantages are the advantages of using a static method, using an XML version method. The other method is that you can have different layouts for different screen sizes. You have a tablet, you have a different layout. Okay, you have a mobile phone, you have a different layout for that. Okay, so one method is you can separate the presentation from a code. Other advantage is you can separate for different kind of devices, different kind of screen sizes. You can have different layouts. Okay, so there is another method, and this method is a runtime method. Okay, what happens over here in the runtime method? So your application, okay, you can use your application to create a view. So your application can create a view and a view group element. So this is a view element and this is a view group element. Okay, at runtime. Okay, using programming. Okay, in Java file, you write a piece of a code so that the tools are generated automatically. Okay. Fine. And your Android framework is flexible for both the methods. Okay, so you can have a runtime method as well. You can have a static XML method as well. Okay, for example, you can declare your app's default layouts in XML file, and then you can modify them at runtime. Okay, let's say you define it at a static time using Android, using this layout editor, or by XML file. Okay, create it at static point of time. Okay, using in the XML, and later on, if you want to modify, use runtime method. Okay, so Android framework is flexible to provide you both the methods. Okay, and this is a static method. This is how your code looks like. This is how your XML file looks like. Okay, if you're opting for a static method. Okay, and this is static XML method. Open up a file and start typing it. Or other thing that you can do is you can also use that layout editor. So let's say you're using you're just opening an XML file and you're typing it. Okay, this is how your code structure looks like. Okay, it says that you have a linear layout over here. I told you linear layout and constraint layout. You have a linear layout over here. Okay, and this is the namespace for XML. Okay, it says that you're using this something like this, and this is what I wanted to tell you before at the beginning of the class. I told you that these are some of the layout parameters. Okay, layout parameters, which layout underscore width, layout underscore height. Okay, so these layout parameters, the values that I told you about match underscore parent and wrap underscore content over here. So this says that, hey, I'm a linear layout. So this, let's say linear layout is the whole white area over here on this mobile phone is a linear layout. Okay, it says that I should be as big as my parent. Okay, match underscore parent means the size of a view. In this case, it's a linear layout. It says that I should be as big as my parent. I should be as high as my parent. So similarly, match underscore parent says that I should be as high as my parent. So the width of a parent should be matched with the width of a layout, and similarly, height of a parent should be matched with the height of a layout that you are going to draw. Okay, and the orientation is a vertical, and it's a vertical manner. Okay, so it's a vertical manner. And for the text view, this is a text view. Okay, it says that the text is hello, I am a text view. So that's why it's over here, hello, I am a text view. And you have a button. Okay, you have a button over here. And both of them are for the wrap content. Like a text view is also, width is also wrap content, height is also wrap content, wrap underscore content. Okay, and for a button also, it's wrap underscore content and wrap underscore content. So what was the meaning of wrap underscore content? I told you they should be as big as they can contain the text. Okay, so see, they are not expanded to this end, and it's also not expanded to both the ends. So it is as big, as high, as wide, so that they can contain the text plus padding. Okay, this is kind of padding. So here, let's say this is a right padding, this is a left padding, some kind of a top padding, some kind of a bottom padding, and here also, okay, top padding, right, bottom padding, okay, right padding and left padding. So including that padding, okay, whatever size it requires to contain that text, okay, it's only that big. I hope you're comfortable with this piece of a code. What do you mean by this piece of a code? You have, at the beginning, you just need to mention that this is the XML version you are using, this is encoding, okay, UTF-8, and then you just go on to start that. The first thing that you need to do is define a layout. That what kind of a layout? It's a linear layout. Okay, and in the linear layout, specify some attributes. Okay, the first attribute is specify the namespace that which you are using, and then specify the width and height, and then orientation. For a text view, specify an ID. Okay, and this is an ID. We will be talking about what the meaning of @ symbol and plus symbol and other things which are there in ID. Okay, later on in other slides. Okay, and this is about, and then you need to say that this is layout underscore width, this is layout underscore height, and so on and so forth, and this is the text. Okay, and column text. And similarly for here button, you need to specify ID and the dimensions. Okay, how wide it is, how high it is, okay, and what should be the text over it. So this is what should be the text over it. And then once you're done, once you think that okay, these are the only controls that you need, okay, then close the linear layout. Open a linear layout over here and then close the linear layout. Okay, so width and height I already talked about. It can be exact number, it can be match underscore parent. If it is match underscore parent, that means that view wants to be as big as its parents minus padding. Wrap underscore content, it includes padding. Okay, I talked about padding. Okay, so I talked about left padding, right padding, top padding. Okay, it should be included when you mention wrap underscore content. Okay, so wrap underscore content for the text view, match underscore parent for the linear layout. Okay, so which means that a view wants to be just big enough to enclose its content. Okay, so once you do that, okay, what you are going to do is find out a resource directory, and inside that directory find out a layout directory and put your file, save your file with .xml extension and put it over there. Okay, so this is what this light indicates. Save it with .xml. Okay, so this black thing, okay, is your XML file, and it should be in a layout directory, and layout directory is further in the res directory. Okay, now how to load an XML resource. See, at this point, up till this point, we have just created an XML file, okay, and we have saved it in a directory. Now the thing is, when you're going to compile your application, okay, you need to load the resource from an XML file. Okay, how to do that? Android framework is able to do that. It's the responsibility of an Android framework. Okay, so how does it do? It calls an activity.onCreate method. So this is an onCreate method. Okay, that snapshot of an onCreate method. It calls, Android framework is going to call this activity.onCreate method, and this method is generally called when an activity is launched. Okay, and this onCreate method, okay, is going to call set content view. Okay, so here it's a set content view. Okay, it's going to call a set content view, and this set content view is responsible for getting a file from that layout. Okay, so it's going to it's responsible for, this Android framework calls an activity.onCreate, and activity.onCreate calls another method which calls setContentView. So it's a responsibility of setContentView, so that XML file which is stored in a layout directory. So here you say that, okay, and let's say just imagine that the file name is main_layout.xml file. So here you do not mention the extension; it is automatically understood that it's going to be .xml file. So you just mention a path R, look for the R file. Okay, R is a res. Okay, R will be boiled down for res. Layout, inside there is a layout directory, and then .main_layout. This is for the XML file, main_layout.xml file. Okay, so this is it. uh, how to load an XML resource file. Okay, this is how it's a responsibility of Android framework. Android framework is going to call on create method of an activity, and which is in turn is going to call set content view, and set content view is responsible for loading the XML resource. And your resources that you have defined, you have, like for example in this example, okay, you have defined, what did you define over here? You defined, let's say here you define a linear layout, a text view, and a button. So these things will be presented over here. So this result that you are seeing over here is the result of this process. Android framework called activity.onCreate, activity.onCreate called setContentView, and then setContentView, okay, was responsible for fetching the file from a layout directory and rendering the contents over the screen. Okay, now let's talk about attributes. Okay, now see here, we saw this slide earlier on also, this sub slide. Okay, so when we talk about the attributes of a layout, okay, now see, layout is, what do you think a layout is? Layout is an object of a view group class, and view group class is derived from a view class. That means there must be some component, there must be some attributes which are common to both of them, which are common to view class, and which are also, they are in a view group class. Just because, like here, if you take this diagram, okay, this portion is common. Okay, this green and blue portion is common. Okay, that means whenever we are going to talk about attributes, okay, there can be two kinds of attributes. One kind of attribute which are common, okay, just because the view sits inside a view group, okay, and there will be certain other parameters which are only specific to layout parameters, and those are called layout parameters, these which belong to this yellow thing. Okay, like we say that whenever we derive a class from some base class, okay, derived class has certain extra features, okay, provides, it adds on, it extends the functionality. Okay, let's talk about common parameters first. Okay, one of the common parameter is ID. Okay, so this is how ID is written: Android:ID is equal to, in double quotes, @ plus ID slash and then name, my_button. Okay, let's try to understand what each piece of information means. Okay, so this @ okay, it's given to XML parser. XML parser sees this @ and this XML symbol, this @ means, okay, it's an indication that rest of the string, that means plus ID slash and my_button, it should be parsed by the XML parser and expanded by the XML parser. Okay, and after it gets parsed, after it gets expanded, it should be considered as an ID. Okay, it should be considered as an ID. Okay, so this means that this whole thing plus ID oblique my_button is an ID. Okay, now let's talk about plus. What do you mean by plus? So plus says that this is a new resource, okay, and it should be added in r.java file. So it informs this. Plus is an indication to an XML parser that, hey, this is a new resource and this should be there in our resource collection, and resource collection is maintained in r.java file. So it uses some coding in r.java file to add it in our resource collection. Okay, but sometimes the resources are not new, resources are already there, you are just making use of those resources, and those resources which are already there are generally referred to as Android resources. Like in programming, we say that there are some built-in data types and there are some customized data types. Okay, whenever we are going to customize data type, let's say you are using, that classes or structures. Okay, these are some of the new resources that you can think of. But using built-in thing are like Android resources. So whenever you are going to make use of Android resources, okay, do not use that plus symbol. Okay, so let's say you are going to use Android symbols, do not use plus symbol. Okay, what you need to do other than plus symbol, just mention the namespace Android:. Okay, That's a namespace that you need to mention. Do not, because this is not a new resource. You're not going to add. You're not going to instruct XML parser. Hey, XML parser, this is something new. Add it in r.java file. It is already there in that r.java file. You don't need to, or do that. It's already there in some other resource collection, right? Okay. So let's talk about layout parameters. I told you that there are two kinds of parameters here in this slide. Okay, one kind of common attributes and layout parameters. Okay, there are a bunch of other common parameters as well, but we're not going to talk about those parameters. I wanted to introduce that ID thing. Okay, that's why I elaborated much on what do you mean by @ symbol. @ symbol is a notification to XML parser that rest of the string has to be parsed, has to be expanded, and it should be treated as an ID. Okay. And this plus symbol means that this is a new resource. It should be added in r.java file. Okay, and then there are other resources also which are not new, which other than other resources which are already there, built-in resources. Okay, for them, do not use this plus symbol. Use plus symbol only if the resource is a new resource. Okay, layout parameters. Layout parameters are not the common parameters. They are only specific to the layout. Okay, and let's say, for example, you have a layout, and inside the layout you can also nest another layout, another kind of a layout, like this kind of a tree which you are witnessing over here. It says that the parent layout is a linear layout. So inside a linear layout, you can also have a constraint layout, and other than constraint layout, you also have other views. Okay, so for views, you have a linear layout dot layout params, and yeah, these are the attributes that I was talking about in green. Okay, capsule symbol, green symbol. These are the attributes which are associated with the view. Okay. Similarly, there are views in a constraint layout. Okay, and those views also are associated with the parameters. Okay. So linear layout has constraint layout and other views, and that constraint layout has further other views. Okay, and we'll be talking about what do you mean by layout parameters, what do you mean by constraint layout. Okay, we saw an example of a linear layout in our example, but for an example of a constraint layout, you have to wait till the next lecture. Okay. Okay, so if I talk about a common pattern, let's say we have seen how to create an XML file, how to you need to write an XML namespace, and after that you need to specify that this is a kind of a linear layout or a constraint layout, okay, type of a layout you mention, and after that you add some of the resources. Let's say what do you actually do in order, if you want to create a view, or how to refer it from an application. Okay, this is what to do. There are two-step method. Okay, the first method is define a view widget in your layout file that we have already seen, assign it to a unique ID. I hope after this discussion that I have carried you through with, okay, you must be able to make sense of what do you mean by @ symbol, what do you mean by plus symbol. Plus symbol says that it's a new resource. @ symbol says that the entire thing should be parsed, okay, should be parsed and identified as a unique ID. Okay, and this is for, I told you about a wrap content also. Okay, wrap underscore content. What do you mean by wrap underscore content? It should mean that this button should be large, should be wide enough, should be high enough, only to contain, okay, whatever is a string over there. And that string here, you did not mention a string over here. It is in a string.xml file. Okay, so this is also an indication to a XML parser. Look into the string.xml file. Okay, and there you will be finding what a resource called my underscore button underscore text. Okay, and that resource of that should be copied over here. Okay, and once you do that, okay, once you have, let's say you have an XML file, once you do that, then you go to the onCreate method. Okay, go to the onCreate method of your application. Okay, and then you get that my underscore button. Okay, by this. Okay, by using find view by ID. You call this method find view by ID. It's going to return you a resource, which is a button resource. Okay, and from where it is going to render, it is going to get in the resource folder, res folder, and in that res folder there will be an ID. Okay, and that will be my underscore button. It is going to look for ID, and that is my underscore button. Okay, so that will be returned to you. Okay, this is it for today's session. This is a pretty short session. Okay, and next session, in the next session we are going to talk a bit more detail, a bit more programming examples as far as layout is concerned. But in the next lecture I'm planning to cover up this layout in half of the lecture, and in rest of the lecture, okay, a new topic will be started. Okay, and this is it. If you have any questions, you can ask. Okay. let's say, let me just go through one more time. This is for layout. This is how I started, because some people joined late and there was an internet connection also. This is, I mentioned that layout hierarchy. Okay, so your entire view group, your entire, the UI which is there on an Android application, can be presented as a tree of view. Okay, and this represents that hierarchy which defines the layout. Okay, it says that this can be a kind of a layout. There is a view group. Object of a view group is a layout. Object of a view is a widget or a control that you refer to. Let's say button is a view. Okay, you have a radio button, that's also a view. Okay, so a view group, which is called a layout, which the object of which is a layout. It's an invisible container. Okay, that contains those views. Okay, so we also talked in terms of class diagram and an object diagram. Okay, so as per our tradition, we say that everything in Java is an object. So there is an object class, which is the base class, super base class, and view class is an immediate derived class of an object class, and then you have a view group class. Okay, so if we think in terms of objects, so this is how your thinking should go like this. Okay, for objects, so these are the base objects, and then you have extended these base objects using view class. So that's why the green color over here, and this somewhat orange or pink, or not pink, but somewhat orange or yellow color, okay, represents that view group class. The objects of a view group class are layouts. Okay, two kind of layouts we saw: linear layout, constraint layout. Okay, and the objects are called widgets. They're referred to as widgets. Okay, examples of widgets are button, checkboxes, radio groups. You can also custom design your own widgets. Okay, and we saw there are two methods. One is a static method, other is a dynamic method. Static method, you can just open up a file, XML file. Okay, type the code that you know. Okay, and other than, if you are not comfortable with the how you're going to write an XML file, you can use a layout editor. Okay, automatically your XML file is going to be created. Okay, and then we saw the advantages of this method. Advantages are twofold. One of the advantage is the presentation and code are separated out. Other advantages, there can be different layout for different screen sizes. Okay, so I represented it in this way. So you have a tablet, there is a different layout. If you have a mobile phone, you have a different layout. Okay, then I mentioned you that there's another method which is called a runtime method. Okay, so use your application to create a view and a view group element, view group objects. So this is a view, these are two view objects, these are two view group objects. Okay, and you can manipulate their properties as well. Your application can manipulate their properties as well at the runtime. Okay, and your Android framework is flexible to provide you both the methods. In fact, you can use the conjunction of both the methods, in the sense that you can declare your app's default action in an XML file, and then you can modify the layout at runtime. Okay, and this is one kind of example, okay, of static version method. This is how I told you this is how an XML file looks like. Let's say here you mentioned the linear layout. Okay, after mentioning the version of an XML and encoding that is being used, you mentioned that linear layout. Okay, linear layout. In the linear layout, you specify the namespace, you specify the height and width and height, and you also specify orientation. What kind of a linear layout is? You can have a horizontal layout, you can have a vertical layout. Okay, here this is a vertical layout, and then after that you need to specify this linear layout is going to contain what. Okay, like here we saw that in a view group you can have view elements. In terms of objects, if you say in a layout, you can have the view elements, you can have the widgets. Okay, layout can contain other layout, and layout also can contain other widgets. Okay, so similarly here, whatever you are seeing over here, it is a kind of implementation of this. Okay, so in text view, the ID, we talked about it. What do you mean by @ symbol? What do you mean by a plus? Okay, and yes, these are some of the specifications of text view. And okay, button, this is specification of button. I told you what do you mean by wrap underscore content. I told you what do you mean by match underscore parent. Okay, and then I mentioned that once you have compiled it, save it in a layout directory, which is in res directory. Okay, you should put it over there. Okay, save it with .xml notation, and Android framework is able to load it once you have written it. And how it does it, it calls an onCreate method. Okay, and it's a callback method. Okay, I told you a callback. What do you mean actually callback? Callback is like you are calling a method. Okay, and you do not wait for this whole method to be compiled. Okay, you say that, okay, once you do that, invoke this method, call another method. Okay, so in this case, it is going to onCreate is going to call another method which is called set content view. Okay, this is how it does its job. Okay, I told you that how Android framework does its job. It calls activity.onCreate, and then this activity.onCreate further calls set content view, and set content view is the function which is responsible for rendering the contents of XML file onto your screen. Okay, so then I talked about some of the attributes which are common attribute and layout attributes. Common attribute, why common attribute? Because your view group class, which is the base class for layout, is derived from a view class. That means just because it is derived from a view class, it has to have certain common things. Okay, so common attribute, we saw one of the attribute is ID. Okay, and I told you what I mean by @@ symbol. Okay, and then this @ symbol is just an indication to an XML parser that it has to parse the rest of the string and expand the rest of the string. And after parsing and expanded, once this is parsed and expanded, this is parsed and expanded string. Okay, and it should treat it as a separate unique ID. Okay, so the plus symbol says that is a new resource. It should add it in our Java file. Okay, so the it's not always that we use plus symbols. Okay, when we do not use plus symbol, that means we are using the existing resources. So then I talked about layout parameters. However, I did not mention in details what are those layout parameters. Okay, that will be the topic of discussion for the next class. And common pattern, I mentioned that create views and reference from app, create view in an XML file, and from app, if you're going to refer them, this is how you're going to refer them. Use certain method, let's say find view by ID. Okay, you are providing an ID of a view that you're going to find. Okay, let's say this is an ID of a button. Okay, it is going to get you a button. Okay, and then button can be stored in an object of a button class. Okay, and this is it. I have revised that also. Okay, before that I also covered up some slides of view. Okay, and I'm not going to do that because I have less time. I'm not going to revise that. I have lesser time, only 9 minutes are left. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Okay, and just wait for attendance link and stop the recording.